Suhani and Aditya elope when their parents don't approve of the match. They eventually move into their own home, but their love for each other is tested at every step. Aditya feels happy as he makes his way towards the train station. Because of an accident, he is forced to turn around and take an unusual path. But he's still excited to meet his wife, Suhani, at the Marine Line station. Suhani's friends know how dedicated he is to her, and tease him about how much he waits for her. Aditya's excitement soon diminishes when Suhani doesn't turn up at the station. He calls the hospital she works at, but she has left from there a long time ago. He looks for her through every window of the train, but she's nowhere around. 2 years before this, Suhani is dancing at her friend's wedding. Aditya meets her for the first time, and dances along with her. He makes fun of another friend falling into the trap of marriage. Suhani disagrees with his view about marriage being suffocating. Aditya flirts with her, and claims he didn't expect someone with her attitude in the village. She refuses to share her name, and doesn't care for his advances. He is smitten by her attitude, and wants to know more about her. He ends up asking her father, Chandraprakash, about her. Chandraprakash scares him, and asks him to leave before he beats him up. Aditya finds her again and compliments her smile. He is pleasantly surprised by how bold and confident she is. She still refuses to engage with him directly. Suhani lives in Mumbai's railway colony and is studying to become a doctor. She has no time for the oily food her mom, Shapana, makes. Her elder sister, Dina, tries to sort out their early morning tiff. Shapana thinks Suhani is angry all the time. She feels it's the worst trait for a doctor. Suhani meets Chandraprakash on her way out and takes his blessings so she does well in her exams. Aditya's father, is spending time with his granddaughter, Pinky. When Aditya comes home, taunts him about smoking on a bike with a woman. Aditya thinks there's nothing wrong with what he did, and takes support from his mother, Shanti. Thinks Aditya is useless and is spending all his money. His niece, Pinky, thinks the woman must be Mira, who is like a brother to Aditya. On her way to college, Suhani spots Aditya in a train in front of her. While she stares at him, he keeps smiling at her. Aditya doesn't know her name or any details, but wants his friends to find her. He knows she's a medical student, and it won't be very hard to narrow down the girls who travel by local train. When they cross each other at the station again, Suhani tries to hide behind her friend. Aditya keeps smiling at her, but she thinks he's being cheap. Dina teases Suhani about being in love with Aditya, but she denies it. Aditya's friends tease him about being obsessed with her, and he's sure he's in love. Suhani's friends suggest she can get off at the station when they don't find Aditya on the opposite side. But Aditya and his friends are waiting for her at the station. He finds out where she lives, and tries to observe her. Dina knows he's looking for Suhani, and asks if he knows how to whistle. Because he doesn't, she thinks he must be a decent guy. She asks him to get Suhani's attention with his bike. But Suhani gets angry at Dina, and asks her not to engage with him. He finally confronts her when she's traveling, and hopes they can take things forward. He turns up at her college too, so she decides to directly talk to him. She wonders if it's his hobby to chase women everywhere and leave his studies. He claims he hasn't failed in any papers yet, but she has managed to distract him a lot. She turns away, but blushes when he asks her to smile at him. Aditya imagines himself dancing around with Suhani. He makes Pinky call a shop near Suhani's house. Pinky pretends to be a friend, and Jeevan at the shop asks his nephew to fetch Suhani. He pays Pinky the cash he promised, and waits for her. Suhani doesn't like that he got her number, and thinks he's crossing a line. He calls her to a function at his place, even if she doesn't want to. He claims he will bring his own family to her house if she doesn't come. Suhani turns up at the function with Dina, and Pinky helps them join the crowd. Aditya's aunt, Prema, asks Suhani to participate in the festivities too. Suhani is a beautiful singer, and Shanti also notices this. When the women take her to dance, Shanti wonders where she is. Aditya claims he's going to marry Suhani, and jokes about informing them when the date is fixed. This rumor starts spreading till someone congratulates for his son's wedding. He is equally surprised, and wonders who Suhani is. She scolds Aditya for telling everyone they're getting married. He hasn't asked what she feels yet, and has assumed she likes him too. But Aditya thinks the marriage discussion should happen with elders in the family. When he asks her directly too, she refuses to marry him. He still doesn't take the hint, and decides he will send his parents to her place the next day. She doesn't understand what he means by being in love. He explains that he can do anything for her. So, she asks him to jump from the train, but he's a little scared to do that. Dina tries to figure out if Suhani actually likes him. Suhani keeps making excuses about her studies, but doesn't directly say anything. She still feels Dina should get married first as the elder sister. That night, Dina wonders how their parents will react if a rich family comes over to discuss marriage. Suhani feels awkward and leaves to study, but Shapana follows her. Dina informs Chandraprakash that a respectable barrister, Sehgal, is coming over to ask for Suhani's hand in marriage. Shapana thinks Suhani has somehow seduced the guy on her way to college. They have pawned their jewelry to collect money for Suhani's education. Shapana feels like she is putting all that to waste by thinking of getting married so soon. Suhani assures her that the pressure came from Aditya's side, and she has no part in it. When and Shandy arrive the next day, starts complaining about how small the house is. He jokes about all the houses in that locality looking like small compartments of the trains. Shandy tries to pacify the situation, but Chandraprakash is offended by his attack on their middle-class nature. Suhani and Dina join them, and Shandy remembers that Suhani sings beautifully. Starts ranting about how kids these days decide on their own to marry someone. He feels like parents have no say in such matters, and wonders which one of them is Suhani. Shandy explains that Dina is the elder sibling and still unmarried. Keeps disrespecting them for being poor, and thinks they're waiting for a man to not ask Dina for dowry. This offends Chandraprakash more, because he is proud of how well he has raised his daughters. They might not have money, but he knows their family deserves some respect. Claims he doesn't want dowry either, and doesn't expect anything from his useless son. He thinks he would have to agree to let Aditya marry someone he picked up from the streets too. This is more disrespect than Chandraprakash bargained for. He asks to leave, and refuses to ever let Suhani marry their son. Aditya wonders what happened in the meeting that everyone is so offended. Suhani also feels the way spoke to her dad was very insulting. She doesn't want to go ahead with this relationship, because their parents don't approve. Aditya wants this to be their decision, and asks if his love has no value. Suhani still refuses to leave the parents who have supported her for 20 years. But he can do anything for her, and asks her to give this some more time. In the present, Aditya comes back home when he can't find Suhani. He makes a few calls to her colleagues, but no one knows where she is. In the past, Suhani and Aditya meet after a few days. She still thinks no amount of time will heal their parents. She has decided that she doesn't want to marry him. He tries to understand, and lets her go in peace. After that, Suhani starts traveling by bus instead of the train to avoid running into him. He tries to move on with his life, but starts smoking more. He even gets a new computer, which is the first one in their locality. Pinky calls Suhani's number and gives the phone to Aditya. They both stay silent on the phone, because they have nothing to say. Aditya comes looking for her in college, and asks her friend Nancy. He learns that Suhani has gone to a medical camp, and will return in 3 weeks. He asks his mother for money so he can find Suhani. He promises to be back soon, and asks her to handle when he asks questions. Suhani works hard at the medical camp, but she feels an emptiness inside her. Aditya keeps looking around for her everywhere. Her camps keep shifting, and he keeps missing her by a few minutes. He is waiting at the beach when Suhani arrives and finds him. They run towards each other, and she asks why it took so long for him to find her. He claims he can't live a single day without her, and is willing to do anything. She asks him to marry her secretly, after which they can continue living in their own homes. She feels they can tell their families when the time is right. Suhani is scared on her wedding day, but Dina knows she wouldn't let her marry if she thought this was wrong. Shapana is impressed by how nice Suhani looks, and Dina jokes about getting her married that day. They find Chandraprakash outside too, and Suhani takes his blessings. Aditya hitches a ride with and claims he's meeting a friend. Thinks Aditya is wasting his time with the computer when he hasn't finished his law studies yet. Aditya still wants to start a computer business, and asks his dad to sign the guarantee for the bank's loan. Everyone is waiting for the groom at the temple. Prema finds Aditya near the temple, and he jokes about coming there to get married. She doesn't take him seriously, and he moves ahead to get married to Suhani. They sign the papers, and celebrate with their friends. They remove their garlands and any other proof of marriage before heading to their respective homes. Aditya is upset he can't spend the wedding night with his wife. She asks him to have patience, because they have to wait for Dina to get married first. In the meantime, she wants to finish her internship and asks him to get started on his business. He tries to hug her in the bus, but she feels conscious about people watching. He reminds her she is his legal wife, and is carrying around the certificate. While she's at work, Suhani receives a call from him. He just wants to flirt and is missing her. Aditya waits for her for 2 hours at the beach. She gets off from work late, and can only meet him for a few minutes. But Aditya is satisfied with just a glance of her in his day. Their secret marriage continues, and they're excited to be in each other's company. A family comes over to meet Dina for her arranged marriage. Suhani is full of praises for her, and talks her up to them. Shapana insists Dina is simple and responsible. The groom's family claims that the elder son, Raghu, is the same. They ask if Raghu approves of her, but he wants Dina's opinion too. Shapana assures them they arranged for the meeting after taking Dina's approval. Chandraprakash is excited about getting a date fixed for the wedding. Raghu's father likes the match too, but he has another request. He points out that his younger son, Kartik, is also studying medicine like Suhani. He thinks it'll be great if both the brothers get married to both sisters and stay in the same house. Suhani storms off and complains about this unexpected offer. She doesn't want to get married to Kartik, no matter how decent he is. Shapana forces Suhani to agree for Dina. They know the family might reject Dina if Suhani doesn't cooperate. Shapana brings Suhani outside, and claims she got surprised by the offer. Kartik admits even he didn't expect something like this. But now that he has met Suhani, he likes her and asks if she's fine with their match. Suhani confesses that she's already married. She makes sure to take the blame on herself and claims she got married secretly. She introduces Chandraprakash to Aditya, but he slaps him. In the present, Suhani is still missing. Aditya goes to her house in Railway Colony to look for her. Shapana doesn't know Suhani is missing either. She thinks Aditya must have said something to upset her. Aditya arrives at the police station and gives them a description of Suhani. In the past, Aditya and Suhani start packing to leave their house. Shapana thinks she should be ashamed of ruining Dina's chances of getting married too. Dina is in no hurry to marry, but Shapana thinks Suhani was being very desperate. She feels sure Suhani will be pregnant and on the streets in the next couple of months. She asks Suhani to get lost, because there's no place for her in their house. Is offended Aditya married without his consent too. He throws Aditya out and doesn't listen to his family's protests. Suhani tries to take Chandraprakash's blessings before leaving. He throws her bag down and asks her to never show her face again. Suhani promises to him that they'll never keep relations with anyone from her house again. She thinks they both are enough for each other. Their friends find a place to stay for them and bring supplies to help them with their new lives. Daruwala, who is their landlord, jokes about the benefits of eloping. He claims his wife, Pushi, ran away with him when he confessed his love after getting drunk. They're all excited about a positive start for Suhani and Aditya. They settle in, and every chore seems amazing to them because of the company. They work during the day and role play at night, and can't seem to get enough of each other. After a while, Suhani is in a mood to flirt when she wakes him up. But Aditya is more interested in reading the newspaper. She thinks he's not romantic anymore, and burns the paper. Daruwala comes over to ask for them, and reminds Aditya what he promised Pushi. The due date is long gone, and Aditya hasn't paid him. But Daruwala warms up with Suhani brings tea for him. He feels bad that an innocent and nice girl, like Suhani, left her house to be with him. Aditya asks Mira about an update on the Sintal file. Anju and Bhaskar are also following up, but there has been no response from the American coordinators about the project. Aditya gets irritated when Suhani turns up late to the house. She has the only set of keys, and he doesn't like waiting outside like a guard. She knows leaving the keys with Pushi wasn't an option, because Aditya still hasn't paid the rent. It seems like he's making a big deal out of nothing when she just went out to buy groceries. She reminds him how he used to wait for hours on the beach for her. He thinks things are different now, and she feels like he has changed after marriage. He can't see her angry, so he tries to make up for his anger. He claims he will apologize every time they fight like this. She marks a cross on the calendar so she can keep a track of how much they fight. But he flirts with her, and they make up. When Aditya is flirting again with her the next morning, Pushi comes over. She asks about the dish she made for them last night. Aditya claims they enjoyed it a lot, and asks Suhani to take the recipe from her. Suhani is making tea for Mira when Aditya comes back from work. Suhani is sure he'll fight with her again, and asks Mira to wait. He greets them properly, but starts shouting when he reaches the room. He thinks Suhani has misplaced his project report, and she puts another cross on her calendar. But she's in a good mood, and kisses him as he's shouting. Suhani has a tough day at work, because a patient's mother gets violent. When Aditya comes home, she wants to hug him and stay in his arms. But he gets embarrassed about the neighbors watching. She gets upset that he didn't even ask about her day. She feels like he has changed a lot after marriage. When he was courting her, he could always sense even the slightest change in her mood. He kept calling her to make her feel special. Aditya is still ready to do all that, but thinks they have grown up. They have more responsibilities, but she still thinks their romance shouldn't suffer because of it. Suhani is traveling in the train when Shapana and Dina find her. Suhani has missed them a lot, but knows she couldn't come home. Chandraprakash is still angry with her, but he is hospitalized. He has been tested for jaundice, and Suhani wants to meet him. Suhani informs Aditya about her intention of meeting her father in the hospital. He reminds her that she was the one who wanted to break all ties with them. But she is worried now, because she doesn't think her dad can get proper treatment in the railway hospital. He still feels offended that his family didn't inform him, and remembers his promise of not meeting them again. Suhani feels bad because her parents spent their whole life savings to make her a doctor. He asks her to meet her dad if she feels obliged as a doctor. But he remembers how Chandraprakash insulted him with a slap, and refuses to accompany her. That night, he asks Suhani about her father. She has no clue, because she didn't want to break her promise to him. Aditya wants to be there for her, and insists they should meet him the next day. He doesn't care if her father insults her again, and is willing to take any kind of blame. When Suhani and Aditya arrive at her place, they notice some commotion. Suhani realizes that her father has passed away. She tries to touch him, but Shapana thinks his soul will not rest in peace. Shapana still blames Suhani for ruining their lives, and she hopes no other parent has to go through that. Suhani feels very distant after that, and keeps crying. Aditya informs her that if the Sintal project doesn't work, he will have to close his company. But Suhani is still crying, and he asks her to calm down since a lot of days have passed. He feels bad he forced her to get married, but she reminds him it was her idea to marry secretly. She is hurt, and asks him to leave her. She thinks he's regretting marrying her. In his office, Aditya asks Anju to read out what he has written. Anju pretends to be Dina and calls Raghu to a meeting point. Aditya then calls Dina at the bank and pretends to be Raghu. He asks her to meet and claims he wants to remove some doubts. Raghu finds Dina waiting for him at the spot. She wants him to know their family was ruined after his family rejected her for marriage. Raghu feels bad about what happened, but he thinks it's unfair to blame him. She wonders why he called her to meet if he still doesn't accept his mistake. He thinks she called him, and this creates some confusion. Dina notices Aditya hiding and realizes he must have plotted this. She is pissed about him trying to be a matchmaker for them, but he claims their chances got ruined because of him, and he wanted to fix it. Raghu knows Aditya's intentions were good, but he thinks all this is unfair to Dina. Suhani hasn't spoken to Aditya in 10 days and feels weird about it. Nancy thinks that's normal because she doesn't speak to her husband, Raj, for months sometimes. Suhani still suspects that Aditya might be bored of her, but Nancy thinks that is nonsense because everyone knows Aditya only has eyes for Suhani. Aditya finds Dina and Raghu on a date and teases them about scolding him last time. He's very happy things have rekindled between them. Dina informs him that Raghu's family is coming over and they're discussing marriage, but she's upset that her father isn't around. Aditya hugs her and reassures her that everything will work out. Suhani notices him hugging a woman and thinks he might be cheating. Anju and Bhaskar are getting engaged, so Aditya has invited them over for a party. Suhani feels offended he didn't ask her before arranging this. He doesn't understand her anger, but all their friends turn up soon. His friends tease Anju about being stuck with Bhaskar. Aditya also jokes about being stuck with Suhani and how things change after marriage. While wrapping up, Suhani seems sure Aditya is bored of her. He was only joking, but she is sure he has found someone else. This accusation makes him angry because he only loves her. He asks what he did wrong in this relationship, but she refuses to answer directly. She just regrets leaving her parents for him. They attend a beach party for Anju and Bhaskar, but Suhani is still pissed at Aditya. She refuses to acknowledge him and rejects any drinks he offers. He gets irritated by her behavior and starts drinking. She feels disgusted when he starts dancing with someone else and leaves the party in tears. Dina finds Suhani and informs her about her and Raghu. She had asked Aditya to not mention this because she wanted to tell Suhani personally. When Suhani realizes Aditya got them together, she feels bad about doubting him. She runs away to fix things with Aditya and starts crossing the road in excitement. A truck runs her over and the driver, Savitri, looks back in fright. Vera learns that they're getting a 90 million investment from the Parental project, and they all celebrate. That day itself, in the present, Aditya starts driving happily with his headphones. The accident site he stops at turns out to be the one where Suhani is being taken to the hospital, but he doesn't notice her and heads in the other direction. When he meets her friends at the station and jokes around with them, Suhani is getting checked. At Aya's Yashwant Rao's residence, Savitri informs him about the accident she was responsible for. She doesn't have a license and left from the spot in panic after hitting the woman. She informs him about the accident taking place on Kennedy Bridge, and he promises to find out more. Yashwant asks about the accident at the hospital and claims to be her relative. The doctor informs him that she is critical and has a head injury, but the doctors can't operate till someone takes responsibility for her. He gives her name as Savitri and claims to be her husband so he can sign the papers. The police stop Aditya and his friends, and he informs them about his missing wife. The cop tells them about a woman's accident and asks Aditya to check the hospital. Yashwant informs the assistant police commissioner about the accident, who is known to him. He asks him not to cover it up and wants the law to take its course. He also wants to find Suhani's relatives. Aditya asks the hospital about Suhani, but they have just one emergency case. They think Yashwant is the husband of the patient. Aditya and his friends feel they shouldn't assume something wrong happened with her yet. As the doctors take Suhani for the surgery, Aditya misses her again. He asks the police officer to take some action about his missing wife, but he seems disinterested. He thinks Suhani must have eloped with someone, and Aditya fights with him for insulting her. Daruwala informs the cop that Aditya is the barrister's son, and his wife has been missing for many hours. Savitri turns up at the hospital too, because she feels guilty. The doctor informs Yashwant that the surgery was successful, but she is still in coma. The assistant police commissioner has located Aditya's fur, and Yashwant asks him to bring him to the hospital. Savitri and Yashwant want to wait till they successfully hand over Suhani to her husband. The cop brings Aditya to the hospital, and he finds Dina and Shapana there. Shapana asks Suhani to respond, but she starts shaking. The doctors ask them to leave while they check on her. Aditya learns that Yashwant's car hit Suhani, and he signed for the surgery. He threatens Yashwant about consequences if something happens to Suhani. He is sure Yashwant must be driving drunk, and promises to take revenge. Savitri sits down next to him, and claims she will end herself if anything happens to Suhani. She confesses that she hit Suhani. Yashwant asks Aditya to give them any punishment he sees fit, but they are also hoping for Suhani's recovery. Aditya comes to talk to Suhani, and knows she's listening. He asks her to mark the calendar and fight with him again. He He wants her to know he searched for her more than he ever did before their marriage. Now that he has found her, he doesn't want to lose her again. Suhani opens her eyes and asks if he was scared. She jokes about him feeling relieved he can have fun after she dies. Aditya is grateful to have her back and asks her to not joke about jumping off a train for him.